Alrighty, so technically this is working, but I think we can do a little bit better with a little bit cooler of an animation. So we're going to be looking at CSS animations. That's what's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here, but we're going to be using JavaScript to trigger these animations. So we're going to take a brief look at some documentation. So this is the Mozilla documentation on animation. I will provide a link to this within the course, and you can see that it is a shorthand that applies all of these separate animation styles within one property. So you see that we have multiple values here. And if you wanted to click on one of these to learn more about them, you can. For our purposes, we are going to keep it pretty simple. We want to slide in our items like our overlay, but we want them to be staggered, looking like they're lining up in order from top to bottom, and then doing the opposite, animating out. So we're going to need to set a duration, animation duration. So you can see, for example, here that this has a 3-second duration. So it takes 3 seconds to finish the animation. Same with this example. You can click through and they will look a little bit different. We also need a delay to make it staggered. And we're going to use linear as they are here, meaning that the animation moves at an even speed. And lastly, we're also going to look at animation fill mode, which is what allows the animation to determine how it's going to fill going left and right. Because ours is going left and right, we want it to be both forward and backwards filled. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. We can see if we scroll down, there's more examples showing that you can kind of combine these in any order. Another important thing, of course, is the name of the animation. In this example, it is slide in. That's obviously something we're going to need to add as well, the name of our animation. And you can see some other examples here. Feel free to explore this documentation in more detail if you would like. But for our purposes, I think that's a good general overview of what we're going to be doing. Let's jump back to our code and figure it all out. We're going to start in our CSS, and we're going to go down below our nav colors here. And we're going to start by commenting out a title. So this is our slide in animation with delay for each nav item. And we can scroll up to make that a little easier to see. So we're going to start with creating a class, and we're going to do this for each of our animations for each of our nav items. So we're going to have slide in 1. And then we're going to, inside of this, set our animation property. And we're going to first have the name of our animation, which we haven't made yet. We're going to make that after. It's going to be called slide-in. We're going to set the duration, which will be 0.4 seconds. We want it to be linear, meaning that it moves at an even speed. And then we're going to set the delay. So each of these is going to be slightly more delayed. The first one is only going to have a 0.2 second delay. And then lastly, we're going to add our animation fill mode of both so that it's filled both backwards and forwards. So we can copy this, and we're going to paste it 4 more times again. And we're going to change the class numbers here to go from 1 to 5. And the only other thing we need to change now is the duration of the delay. Because as I said, we want each of them to be more delayed than the last. And we're going to do it by 0.2 seconds more on each of them. So 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and then the last one will be 1 second of delay. Next, we're going to need to make the actual animation, our slide-in animation. So we'll scroll down some more here. And we're going to use @keyframes to actually dictate our animation. We're going to have the name here like we would for a function that we're declaring. We're declaring an animation here. And we're going to keep it very, very, very simple. And we're going to do a similar thing with our overlay where we have it off the screen and then we're sliding it onto the screen. So we're going to have from, and then curly brackets, transform, translate x, and this time it'll be minus 100%. because it's not the parent element. And then that's going to be 2, curly brackets again, transform, translate x, and that's going to be 0, meaning it's going to be showing our full navigation. So again, that's a similar process to what we have for our overlay as well. What's going to happen is this animation is going to take 0.4 seconds, and for each of them, it's going to be launched 0.2 seconds after the previous one. Next, we're going to copy all of what we just made here, and we're going to do the opposite for our slide out animation. Okay, so copy that, and we're going to paste that below. And now we need to change slide out. So again, we can use our Control D trick, but you see if we highlight in, we can see that we're highlighting linear, which we don't want to change that. So we'll actually select the dash and then in, and that'll be able to change all the animation names and all the class names at once. So we'll press Control D, and we'll keep pressing it. You can see that each of them are kind of lighting up as I go along. Keep pressing it, press it again, and that's all the ones we want to change. And we can use the left arrow to actually not delete anything, to be on the left side, and then we'll use the right arrow to be where the eye is. Then we'll press delete, and then delete again, and then we'll write out. And you can see that we very quickly changed all of them at once. Awesome. So the next thing is we're actually going to make the duration slightly less. So we're going to copy our 0.4 seconds here. And I know we're going to change this delay, but we're actually going to change all of the delays, so that doesn't matter. This time I'm going to use the right arrow key to be on the right side of what we selected, backspace, and then add a 3. And in this case, our delays are actually going to have the longest delay first and the shortest delay at the end. We're also going to use 0.5 seconds as our maximum instead of 1 second as our maximum as we were sliding in. And we're going to only increment by 0.1 seconds. So we're going to go 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, and then 0.1. And lastly, we'll need to change our slide out keyframes. So basically, we're just going to reverse these. This one is going to be 0, meaning it's starting on the page already, and we're going to be animating it off the page. So that's the equivalent to our slide left class that we added to our overlay. Okay, so let's save that. That's it for our CSS for this, but we're actually going to need to trigger it in our JavaScript. So we know from our last lesson that we need to make sure that we remove a class that is opposing to the class that we want to add. So let's start in our animate in. So we're going to comment out a title here, animate in, and our nav items is what we're animating in. And we'll create the first one, nav1.classlist.remove. So just in case, we're going to remove our slide out one class, and we can copy this, paste it here, and in this one we want to add our slide in class. Okay, so now that you've seen the format, I'm just going to repeat this for the other 4. So I'll fast forward through this. Again, I'm using my Control D select all trick here, and we're done. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for our animate out. So we can copy this whole chunk, and we're going to put it in our else statement here. And I don't know why it formatted like that. I'm just going to highlight everything and Shift Tab to move it back over. We're going to change this to be animate out. And now all of these need to be the opposite. So we can actually select our outs here. We can only do this one time, but we'll change them all to in. So now we're removing the slide in, and all of these for our adding our slide out, we're going to need to manually change. So I can just quickly scroll through and change every other one to be out. Okay, so let's save that and check it out. Okay, awesome. We have our advanced animation working. So you can see that when we toggle it in, the top items are loading in, sliding in first, and as we toggle out, the bottom slides out first, and then the top slides out last. All right, so we've actually completed our functionality here. Awesome. But if we look at our code, we can see that it's pretty long and it's pretty repetitive. So we have 53 lines of code here. I actually know for a fact that we can fix this up and make it less repetitive, and actually we can probably get it to less than 40 lines of code. So I'll see you in the next one where we fix up our JavaScript. Bye for now. Alrighty, welcome back. So as I said before, we can see in our JavaScript that we have a lot of repetitive code happening here. Within modern